What's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today we are talking New York Knicks basketball because, as I'm sure you all know at this point, they made a massive blockbuster a few days ago. They traded for Karl-Anthony Towns from the Minnesota Timberwolves, a guy they've had their eye on for a while, and in exchange send out Julius, Randle, Donte, Divincenzo, and a first-round pick from the Detroit Pistons. There's also some stuff involved with the Hornets to make the salary work. It's a nuts trade, especially when you go down this late in the offseason, two championship hopefuls swapping all-star, all-NBA players, something we really don't ever see happen in the NBA. So there's a lot to talk about. I made a full video breaking down the Timberwolves perspective, and now we need to talk about why I love this trade for the Knicks, and ultimately this helps them become the best New York Knicks team that I have ever seen. In my 24 years of life, there has never been a Knicks squad as good as this one right now. Before we get into the full picture of the team, let's talk about this deal in a vacuum. Sending out Donte Divincenzo and Julius Randle does hurt. Those two guys have done a ton for your franchise in their time here. Julius Randle really brought back this era of Knicks basketball. He came in, became an all-star, all-NBA player, allowed for Jalen Brunson to look at this team and go, hey, that's somewhere I'd like to play. He joined the team, never had a lot of playoff success with the franchise. He was always disappointing in his runs, but ultimately, Randle did a lot to bring the Knicks back to relevancy. So, shout out to Julius Randle, and of course, I'm excited to see what he does with Minnesota. One more time, if you want to see my thoughts on how that Wolves team is going to shake out, you can go watch that video. It's the one right before this on the channel. And Donte was insane this past season. He was a sniper, hit over 250 threes, played some really good defense, and had one stretch in the season where Randle, of course, missed a lot of the year, and then Jalen Brunson went down when they really started to fall apart with injuries at one point during the regular season, and Donte stepped in and had a stretch of games where he's out there scoring like 20, 25, 30 points. Donte was incredible, and I thought he could be a Sixth Man of the Year candidate going into the season. If he was still with the Knicks, going to be a bit harder over in Minnesota with Naz Reid off the bench. But regardless, he's an amazing player who just had the best season of his career with the Knicks, and they're going to miss that knockdown volume shooter in their backcourt. But in the meantime, they get Karl-Anthony Towns, who did just have maybe the best season of his entire career. The numbers aren't going to quite reflect that, but he was an all-star and really bought into winning. One of my big complaints with Cat over the course of his career up until this past season was that he didn't really feel like a winning type of player. He had had a number of disappointing games in the playoffs. He had never really felt like a guy that was going to contribute at that high of a level, especially not as one of your best players. But this past season, he bought in a lot more defensively, continued to defer to Anthony Edwards and let him rise to superstardom, and was integral to their success in the playoffs. They do not win that series against the Denver Nuggets without Cat, who played some of the best defense out of anybody on Nikola Jokic, had a couple of big games here and there. Cat was incredible for them. So I've steadily over the past year become a bigger fan of him and a bigger believer that he can be an integral piece to a championship contending team, which is why I really like this addition for the New York Knicks in a number of ways. First of all, they had to get a center, whether it was Cat, whether it was trading for a more role-playing center, a backup guy just waiting until Mitchell Robinson returned from injury. They needed somebody, but ultimately I like them taking this big swing rather than just going for one of those backup guys. They could have gone for like a Nick Richards or someone like that, and it would have been fine. It would have been like, okay, great, this is a big addition for the moment, and then Mitchell Robinson comes back, and you've got a pretty solid big rotation. But even when Mitch Rob comes back, how much can you actually rely on him to stay on the court? He has been unbelievably injury prone over the course of his career, and while he's really good when he's out there, can you trust him to be there in the biggest moments, especially when you need competent big man play going up against the Joel Embiids of the Eastern Conference, or the Kristaps Porzingises, or the Giannis's? There are some big threats at the big man spot in the East, so they needed somebody to either help defend those guys or at least somewhat match some of their production, and Cat gives them a chance. He's not going to slow down Joel Embiid that much, but he can give you big scoring outbursts and allow you to kind of even the playing field. Not to mention, he brings elite stretchability from the big man spot. The Knicks haven't had a stretch center like this in quite some time. You had Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein last season, who were both amazing in their own ways, but neither one of them really opened up the floor that much for Brunson to attack, which is what he likes to do. He likes to get downhill, get in the mid-range, be that post-scoring guard. He can also knock down threes at a ridiculously high clip, but just opening up the court for him more gives him way more options. It makes him way more difficult to defend, which alongside these options like Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby is huge, because the easier it is for Brunson, the more they have to sag off of those guys, which allows them to hit those corner threes, those catch and shoot looks that they're so good at hitting. Cat is going to really elevate everybody on this team by adding a player of his caliber that teams really need to respect, you elevate the game of everyone, which I feel like is something that not enough people are talking about with this acquisition. This is also a team that has so much versatility across the roster. You could theoretically start Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Cat, which might be the most likely outcome, but you could also have Josh Hart come off the bench and start Deuce McBride playing alongside Jalen Brunson as that defender that can just knock down those shots and have Josh Hart be the energy guy off the bench. You could also theoretically, Mitchell Robinson comes back, run a lineup of Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Anunoby, Cat at the 4, which he has a lot of experience playing now from the past couple of seasons with Minnesota, and then Mitchell Robinson at the 5, which could help eliminate some of the defensive concerns that come with Cat playing that 5 spot, because Robinson is a great defender, Mikal and OG are two of the best wing defenders in the league, and Brunson can hold his own if you need him to. And again, Cat showed a lot of promise this past season with buying in defensively, and having Tom Thibodeau as that coach who is notoriously good at getting players to buy in, that should be big for him. Really, if there was ever a roster that was going to maximize the strengths of Karl-Anthony Towns, it probably would be this team where you don't need him to be the one option. You've got Brunson who can go ahead and do that. You've got some great auxiliary options, so Cat can take even more of a backseat if it's not falling for him that night. You've got multiple defenders to kind of shore up his defensive deficiencies. I really like this trade. I've seen so many people over the past few days, and especially when the trade first happened, say that the Knicks made a massive mistake, that they traded for a player who was soft and couldn't help them win. When I completely disagree. I think it's the opposite. I think when you're a team like the Knicks who has a chance to go all in to compete with the Boston Celtics and the Sixers and the juggernauts out west, you've got to make whatever moves you can. And when Brunson gifts you something like the massive pay cut he took, you have to take advantage of that. If Brunson didn't take that pay cut, the Cat trade was not possible. But because he did, they said, okay, we've been given a chance to really make another massive improvement after it seemed like the Mikal trade was their one big one of the offseason, and they swung for the fences on Cat, which honestly, I love. I love that the front office is being aggressive. They see that the Knicks are right there. They have a chance to win a championship. They're not going to stop just because they feel comfortable. They want to swing for the fences, which is what you should do. And by swinging for those fences, they have again created the best Knicks team that I have ever seen. They're just loaded with talent. It starts up at the top with an all-NBA caliber player, nearly all-NBA first-teamer this past season in Jalen Brunson. You can argue about whether or not you think he's a superstar, top 10, top 15, whatever. If you think he can lead a team to a championship with a roster that has this much talent on it, I think he can. He averaged 29 points per game last season, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, on 48% shooting from the field and 40% from deep. That's crazy efficiency for a guy who was without his second option for a majority of the season. Defenses were just putting their best defender on him night in, night out, and it still didn't matter. He has evolved in so many ways, has become a much better player than I ever could have imagined. He is elite, and with a team that has this much talent, he's capable of leading them to a title. And they've supported him with great moves along the way, like the OG Anunoby trade. When OG got to the Knicks, he changed everything. That team just leveled up completely defensively. He already has one of the best plus minuses in Knicks history after playing just half a season with the team, even less because he dealt with injury. He is one of those transformational players. His ability to knock down those shots on the catch, to create a little bit, to just give the opposing team's best player absolute hell on that defensive end is huge. I mean, especially when you're going up against like the Celtics with Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum, you need a guy like OG who can clamp up. When you're going up against the Sixers, who now have Paul George, you need somebody who can clamp those guys, and OG is capable of doing that. So is a guy like Mikal Bridges, who took a dip defensively in Brooklyn, but that was because, in my opinion, he was being asked to do way too much on the offensive end. Now he can take a bit of a step back. He can be like that third option most nights, which is the role I think you want Mikal Bridges in. It allows him to focus more energy defensively, to still utilize some of the self-creation chops that he showed in Brooklyn that he got time to work on and develop, which ultimately I feel like is really going to benefit his game in this new role. But he doesn't have to be that number one option like Brooklyn was trying to make him into. He was never going to be a winning player in that role. Instead, he's the 3 here. He can still have some 2 nights. Hey, maybe there's even some nights where he's their best offensive player. And just having either him or Cat or Brunson who can all go off, even OG could have some big games here and there. It's huge. And again, you still have some guys off the bench. It's not as much depth as you had before the trade, but it's still decent. Like Deuce McBride had an amazing last season. I think he's ready for a bigger role. Josh Hart is a superstar role player who does everything that you need him to, whether it's grabbing 15 rebounds, it's dishing out some dimes, it's hitting a big 3 sometimes, because he's not the best shooter, but it feels like anytime you put him in one of those big moments where he has to hit when he's going to hit it, he can do a little bit of everything. Precious Achiuwa was decent sometimes with the Knicks, not amazing, but was able to hold his own at some moments. And when Mitchell Robinson comes back, whether he's starting or off the bench will kind of change the makeup of that bench as well. But it's not like Tom Thibodeau plays many bench guys anyways, and in today's NBA, if you have enough talent up top, it's not like you need a 10-deep rotation to win a championship. If you just can have a great 8 guys, which is exactly what the Knicks have, you're in a perfectly fine spot, especially when the talent up top is as good as it is with New York. And even if you're more concerned with the depth than I am, they can still upgrade this team. I mean, Leon Rose and the Knicks front office have shown that they're willing to be hyper-aggressive. I imagine they would be this season as well. If they feel like there's a hole in this team, if there's some injuries, they will make moves. Now, they don't have a ton of capital left, but they still have a bunch of second-round picks and some first-round picks that they can mess with, some swaps way down the line. This is a Knicks team that has room to improve, has a great foundation already in place. I think there's a real chance they get the number 1 overall seed in the Eastern Conference, especially because the Celtics are dealing with the Porzingis injury to begin the season. They're probably not that set on gunning for the 1 seed the way that they did last year. They're probably like, okay, we won a championship. We know we can win from pretty much anywhere, or at least they feel like they can. They'll go after it. I'm sure they'll still go for the 1 seed. It's going to be hard to take it from them, but this Knicks team, in my opinion, is built to win 60-plus games in the regular season and be an unbelievably tough force once you get to the postseason as well. Like, you have to remember that the Knicks were 1 game away from the Eastern Conference Finals last season despite being decimated by injuries, and now you put Cat into the fold. I feel like anybody who hates this trade for the Knicks is underestimating what Cat is going to do. Sure, the contract is big, and sure, there could be some question marks, I guess, about how they're going to look defensively when he's out there, but I'm really not worried about it. I think this was a home run move. It was a swing that they had to take, and one that ultimately is going to pay dividends. I already felt like the Knicks were probably a championship contender, but now, with this trade, they are firmly in that tier, and there's a real chance that they end up as the team that dethrones the Boston Celtics in the East and is representing the conference in the NBA Finals. And if you're the Knicks, if you're a Knicks fan, that's really all you can ask for. There's a good chance there are top 10 teams on both sides of the ball. They've got talent top to bottom. Again, best Knicks team that I have ever seen. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this trade down below in the comments. Do you agree with my assessment that it's the best Knicks team of the past 24 years because that's how long I've been alive? How do you like the Cat trade? Do you feel like they gave up too much? Was it a steal for them potentially? How do you think he impacts the other players on this roster? If you're concerned about something, what is it? Is it the potential for injuries? Is it the depth? Do you not think Jalen Brunson can be the number 1 on a championship team? I'd love to hear all that down below in the comments, as well as go ahead and leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Helps the channel out a ton. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. A lot of content coming leading up to the season. A lot of prediction videos coming soon. You don't want to miss out on those, as well as live coverage for pretty much every night or most nights throughout the NBA season. It's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of content coming soon. I'm super excited for the season. But yeah, one more time, appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.